So I'll give you a little introduction and then we will go ahead and get started. Siskiyou Land Trust is located up in far northern California, and in fact, we work from Mount Shasta, so have the lovely experience of not only working but also living here on the slopes of Mount Shasta, where we really hope we're going to get some snow later in the week. Siskiyou Land Trust does work around the county. A lot of that work is through placing conservation easements on lands with high conservation values. Last year, we made a huge leap in the number of conserved acres as we went from just below 7,000 to just over 35,000 acres. Wow. Yeah, under conservation easement. And a lot of that's working forest land. We got to see really amazing things, Jack, when we were out setting our baseline photo points. Lots of super interesting flowers. We got to see a bear one day when we were out. So it's a really amazing thing to get out and see these special places. So for any of you folks who are from out of the area and unfamiliar with Siskiyou Land Trust, if you are coming up to Siskiyou County, and particularly if you're coming to Mount Shasta, take a look at us at siskiyoulandtrust.org and learn a little bit more about what we do and also the places that you can visit, like Sisson Meadow. And with that, Jack, I want to say thank you so much for joining us tonight. It really is a pleasure. And now I'm going to turn it over to you. Thanks so much.
Hey, Renee, thank you so much. I'm really honored to be here with you and the Land Trust crew. What you are doing to preserve land, to preserve habitats, to preserve nature in this incredible land. For future generations is so forward thinking, so powerful, and making that a win-win situation for landowners and for nature and for all the people who want to visit. It's such important and powerful work. I want to encourage everybody to support the Land Trust in any way that you can. It's a wonderful organization to kind of unite around with kind of big picture goals of how to make nature and our lives in this community work together. So Renee, thank you so much for what you're doing. Today, what I want to do is share with you a strategy to make your next ramble walking out in the woods even more fun. Let's see, I'm going to spotlight, there we go. What I want to do is to share this this approach to nature journaling. So I'm going to explain what that is, and then what we're going to do is we're just going to grab our stuff and walk outside together. We're going to go a little bit outside of town, turning around and take a look at the mountain. It's a beautiful sunny day. You see, I've invented the capacity to time travel, so we're going to be time traveling together to a few weeks from now. And we're going to be going into the future, and we're going to be journaling about it. And then later on, we can check these notes against what happens when that calendar date rolls on. So we're going to be doing a little bit of time traveling, and it'll be a lot of fun. So first, let me sort of give you an example of what a nature journal is, because sometimes just sort of seeing it, you go like, oh, I kind of see what you're up to. That's kind of cool. I think I want to try that. So if you try this, if you start doing this, got to warn you, this is addictive. This is really, really addictive, and it's fun. Anybody can do it. You don't need to be an artist to do it. You don't need to be a writer to do it, but you're going to be using drawing as a tool to think and observe. You're going to be using your writing, and it's an amazing way to kind of train yourself to notice the little secrets in the landscape that are happening around us all the time, to notice more and to be able to remember it. Let's take a look. Hold on. There we go. Whoop. All right, so this little book here, this is a nature journal. And so what I'm doing is I'm making little sketches of cool birds that I see and making little written notes about what they're doing. And I tend to really, really like birds. But over here, this is notes of a weird iridescent sheen in a pond that was doing this rainbow thing. So here's the rainbow strip. This is me. This is the degrees of arc from where the sun was to me to the little phenomenon that I was looking at. So what I'm doing in this book is anything that I notice that I think is cool, I'm putting my observations here into this book. And I'm writing about them. I'm measuring things. I'm taking notes. This is the Termite Emergence right next to my house. So these are some flagstones. And the little purple dots are where all the termites were coming out. See, the purpose of doing this isn't to make a pretty picture of a termite. The purpose of doing this is to be able to notice things that I otherwise wouldn't see and to help me really recall and make the most of that later on. So whether that's an interesting sunset, watching the green flash, or watching your daughter explore a fallen tree, anything that I wonder about, anything that I notice, those details are all going down into this book. So when I go out, I really don't have a plan of what I am going to be doing. I'm usually just rambling about and watching for, you know, what is interesting here, what is going on here that I want to think more about, and then something will present itself from me, and it will take me down a really interesting rabbit hole. So you see that each one of these pages is I'm kind of following a different little rabbit hole of learning something from my own discoveries, my own interactions with nature. So let's do this here in Siskiyou County. So what we're going to be doing is it's a little bit after going through my time machine. It's a little bit of an overcast morning, so you're going to want to kind of dress warmly. You might want to bring a pair of binoculars. I'm going to suggest that you just grab, all you need is just some little notebook and a pencil or a pen. You don't need any fancy tools to do this. But what we're going to be doing is we're going to be going out, we're going to be finding, just sort of rambling around, finding some cool stuff, and then putting that down on our piece of paper. I'm also going to be demonstrating a couple of techniques for drawing whatever it is that we encounter. If it's a mammal, we'll be doing mammals. If it's a landscape, we'll be doing that, throwing in whatever bird shows up. Not really sure what's going to be happening. It's a little bit chilly, so you might want to bring some snacks in your pocket as too. All right, you ready? Let's go. Now, what we're going to do is now that we've kind of parked a little ways outside of town and look back, you know, I am not from here. So looking back at the mountain really, really impresses me. So what I usually do when I'm sketching and journaling is I'll put down right at the start of my day journaling, some little kind of quick sketch that is going to help me remember this place. And that can be a little landscape drawing. That can be, you know, some found object, you know, if there's just a cool pine cone or a little acorn. Pine cones are kind of harder to draw. So acorns, those are easy. But something to kind of just get something going on your page. That way you've broken in the page and it's not going to be as threatening. But sitting here looking over at that mountain, that's a cool mountain. So I'm going to do a little sketch of that mountain, and I'm going to show you how to do a speed drawing of a landscape. So sometimes when we think of, like, if you're going to do a landscape drawing, you got to be there for hours and hours and hours. But this is what we call a landscapito. So it's a landscape made small. If you make your landscape big, it takes forever. But you're going to see that in just, 5 minutes here sitting by the side of the road, we're going to be able to get a lot of information on the page to help us remember this place. All right. So let me jump over to, you might want to gather around here to take a look at my journal. So in anticipation of this, I've already written our date here. So you'll notice we're time traveling. This is in the future. So our day started off cloudy, but now at about 10 a.m., sun is starting to kind of peek through those clouds. And I just want to make a little Shasta sketch here. And I want to show you how I might go about making a fast Shasta sketch to help me be able to do this. When I'm doing a sketch like this. I'm here looking up at the mountain. What I will often do is instead of making a big, here's Mount Shasta, right? I'm going to make a little tiny drawing. So if I do a little landscape drawing and it doesn't take up too much room, I'll be able to finish this before my friends get bored of kind of hanging out. So what I'm going to do is make it small. So I'm going to make my little sort of my little Shasta occupy no more than this little area here. And so that will be a little kind of landscape drawing of Mount Shasta. I start off usually with just a light valued colored pencil. And when I do that, it allows me to kind of block in the shape, right? So there's sort of a big peak with a little shelf on the side. Then we see this other crater coming up here. We have there's some forest land in front of it. There are hills. So I usually will sketch in kind of my drawing lightly at the start. And then once I kind of go like, yeah, that kind of works, then I will go over this with more detail. There's going to be a big tree right in there. If I have some things in my drawing overlapping other things, the drawing is going to feel like it has a lot more depth in it. So I see these trees over there. So I'm going to put those trees in and they're going to overlap the whole business. And then you're going to have a sense that there's things that are really close, things that are in the middle ground, and then further away we get the mountain. All right. What I'll do once I kind of get things lightly blocked in is just go over a few of the kind of key lines with a little bit more detail. I'm going to put in a few other little trees further back here. If I have big trees up here and some smaller trees back here, people are going to feel that, oh, that gives you even more of a sense of depth in it. All right, so let's start with I'm going to draw in now the objects that are closer to me. And so here's an approach for a fast tree. What I do is I find it helps to just sort of pay attention to, the kind of the shape, just the outline of the tree. And you want to just kind of look back at whatever tree you're doing, and you're going to avoid a shape that is too symmetrical. If you have a really symmetrical shape there, it's not going to feel like a tree. And then this tree has a little friend near it. And I'm just making sure that these two trees do not have the same exact shape, getting just sort of a general shape here. And then for saving time, I'm just got a ballpoint pen here. I'm making a set of dark lines across them, saying like, look, oh, there's a dark tree. There is another dark tree. I usually do the stuff that's in the foreground close to me first, because then as I'm drawing the background, I'm going to stop drawing this mountain over here when it gets to those trees. But if I drew the mountain in first, I would have mountain going through my trees, and I don't want that. So I've got some other trees back here. As I'm putting these ones in, I want these trees back here just to be a little bit less detailed, a little bit less, kind of a little bit more sketchy, because I don't want them to pop out quite as much as my foreground trees. So I'm getting these things that kind of stick up in my foreground, and then I'm going to put in a hill behind them. Now, see how this line here from this hill comes down and it ends over here? I'm going to just sort of put a little ground plane line out here. And because this one comes down here and it's lower on my page than that line that is coming across there, this will make this stuff here feel like it is in the foreground. Some distant little trees back here, and I'm good. Now I'm going to go back a little bit further. There's a hillside back here. And as I put that in, I'm going to use a lighter line. So there's a lighter line. Notice that the foreground stuff I pushed hard to get these lines to be a little bit thicker. This stuff, it's going to be a little bit lighter, and that helps push that into the background. And then I have my mountain. So I'm going to draw this lightly, not bearing down really hard with my pen. And I keep looking back to the mountain to get the shape of what I'm doing. And it won't be exact kind of line for line, but it'll be kind of close enough to suggest it. And there is snow up on the upper reaches. I'm going to put in one more kind of zone of light shading just by going lightly with my pen. And I want you to notice as I do that across this mountain, the direction of my shading marks is going to change. So I'm going to start kind of coming over here like this. And then somewhere in the middle here, I'm going to switch to kind of coming in like this. And that does a pretty good job of just helping whoever's looking at this sort of feel like you're kind of wrapping around the sides of a mountain. I'm going to put a few little details in, but too much is going to be a problem. I don't want to have too much detail up there. So that didn't take very much time. And there's a little Mount Shasta. If you're somebody, you can, if you're working with pencil, this can just be a pencil sketch and you're good. If you're working with pen, you can do the same thing. If you're interested in using color on your page, colored pencils are a great way to also start to add some color into your page. If you get more experience with it, watercolors become a lot of fun. But at the start, there's a little bit more of a learning curve with watercolors. But I want to demonstrate for you kind of a little bit of what I do. This is my brush here. But let's just kind of take a look down here. And I'm going to add in a little bit of color on this. And what I'm going to do is the stuff in the background here, I'm not going to have as much sort of bright, warm, yellowy colors in it. It's going to be rather cool blues and greens back here. It's going to get a little bit warmer. And when artists say warm, they're usually talking about sort of yellows and reds and things. In the foreground, you're going to see how that's going to give this drawing a little bit of depth. So I'm going to deliberately use different colors in different places, and I'll kind of walk you through what that is. So in the background there, I want that to sort of feel like it's further away from me. So what I'm going to be doing is I'm kind of taking a dull blue-green and putting that into the lower reaches of my mountain. As I get a little bit closer to me, there's a forested hillside here. And so I'm going to put that in a little bit darker. And that will make that, I want it even darker than that hillside kind of pop out and feel like it is something that's in front of that other one. Let that dry a little bit. And as it's drying in the hills in front of me here, I'm going to have that be lighter. And then I've got a few trees right in here. little bit of reflection on this that you're seeing on the screen there. But as this dries, that will disappear. There's some snow on the mountains. So I'm going to just put a little bit of white paint up there because I'm using toned paper. And then I'm going to put a little bit of blue in my sky because that clouds have cleared away. And so I've got just a little bit of blue up here. And I really I want to have that sky be a little bit darker so that the white of the snow really pops out. So see that even with adding color into it, it didn't take too long. We still got a lot of reflection off there that will dissipate in just a moment. Put in a few little sagebrush moments down here. I want to show you one of what I think is one of the best tricks for making any little kind of landscape study even better. So if you do a little landscape study and you want it to, it's not how pretty it looks. What really is the critical thing is that there's a lot of information in there. So if I've got sagebrush here and I've got those blotches, why not just draw a little dot in there and draw a little line coming out from that and say sagebrush. And I'm going to put a little dot in the sky here and a little line coming out from that and say 2 ravens cut the sky. If I start adding words into my sketch, it is going to be more and more and more and more powerful. The more that I have, more information I get in here, the better. So a great way of doing that is with words. So notice just how having a little line to the dart to those birds up there and say 2 ravens cut the sky, all of a sudden this picture is starting to be animated. Is there anything else that I can say about this place? It's still. Sound carries. I'm going to say the wings of the birds heard far off. Whoosh, whoosh. So there's kind of an idea that connects to those ravens. So you see what I'm doing here is I'm starting with some kind of anchor. And then now I'm able to add the sound effects into it. I can, identify things. If I know what type of tree this is, I can put that in. If I know anything that else that I can add with words into this is going to help. So 2 big strategies here. Number 1, look at the size of the pen relative to the landscape drawing. That's a small landscape drawing. That allows you to finish it rather quickly. And number 2, we're annotating this, and that really brings that alive in a different way. Clouds are starting to It's a cloud that is starting to form up there on the top of that peak that wasn't there when we first showed up. That's interesting. So I'm going to just put a little note in that a cloud is starting to form, and it's now about 10:30. That's more paint than I thought I would get. So I'm going to just kind of, 10:30, cloud forms. So now we have time in it. We have time, we have weather. You see how that this whole thing just becomes more alive with these annotated things. Oh, did you hear that? Okay, over there, up in the tree. What we're going to do is no, see the tree next to the tree by the rock, just kind of up there on the branch. Okay, yeah, by the, have you ever heard birders talk that way? Maybe birders try to give directions to see, okay, go to the tree. Yeah, and like it's on the branch, just right there on the branch. Okay, so what I do when I see a bird is I just start saying out loud whatever details I see on that bird. And that helps my memory be able to hold that a little bit longer. So when I'm looking at a bird, I kind of go like, ooh, it's like really kind of chunky, puffed out, like short, sharp beak, all gray body, a little bit of white around its eye, black eye, gray head, gray body. It's all gray, just sort of chunky gray, maybe slightly darker on the head and the chest, but all just kind of gray, just a big kind of fluff ball. And then what I do is I will start to kind of air draw it. So if I'm looking at the bird, I'll sometimes kind of feel like if I can see there's an angle down its back, I'll feel that, I'll pat the bird or air draw the angle on the back of that bird. But so I'm saying things out loud about it. I'm kind of trying to kinesthetically get my brain to hook into it. That's going to help my brain have more information in it when I then look down at my page and I start to make a sketch of it. Because we're going to make a sketch of that bird. Not really sure what type it is. It's all kind of gray. And it's sort of making this little kind of chirp noise. So it would be, yeah, that's helpful. This bird went chirp. Like, isn't it interesting? Like, we don't have really good ways of describing lots of sounds. We do sort of a low chirp. Well, and it's repeating it. So it's a repeated chirp. And so what you can do is you can time it. So like chirp, chirp, chirp. So it's making these chirps about maybe 2 seconds, maybe a second and a half apart from each other, these little chirps. So I'm going to first, before I forget that, because I'm going to forget that, I'm going to put that down in my journal. And then I'm going to make a quick sketch of this bird. You're thinking like, but birds, they keep moving. Like, how can you sketch them? So the ones like the little warblers that are like here, there, gone, those are hard. But this bird is cold, so it's chilling. And it's hanging out there and it's being cooperative. And so I'm going to make a little sketch of it. I'm going to annotate that with a few lines. And maybe when we get back home, we'll be able to pull out a field guide and identify what that bird is. All right. So let me go to the journal again, and we'll drop in some notes about that bird. So basically, if you see something, say something. And if you say something, get that down on your page as well. So you don't have to so what I do, again, I'm going to start just with I was sort of patting the bird and it kind of had a back that was about at this angle. Its head popped up a little bit. On my website, I've got a bunch of kind of strategies of how I start to draw birds. It usually is I find the back angle, I block in its head, and then I put in kind of just the throat to the start of the chest. So back, head, chest. And then that allows me to kind of block in a ball of its body. So that's my kind of frame out for the start of a bird. And so what I do is I'll put these little notes. This is GY. On the chest, it's GY. So GY is my code for gray. If I put in a G, I can't tell the difference between green and gray. And so I put the first and the last letter in, because if I put the first two letters in, green and gray would still be the same thing. Same with black and blue. So I put the first and the last letters in as little codes for me. Now it's so cold that this bird is super, super fluffed out, fluff. Just making light little notes. So chirp, low chirp. And those are at about 1.5 seconds. And oh, white eye ring. So I will often kind of just lightly with my pencil put in a whole bunch of notes, slightly darker wing. And it's hanging out on a little branch. So when I'm blocking things in, I usually am not putting in much more detail than kind of what you're seeing here. But what I'm going to do now is I'm going to just add a little bit more detail onto this. And I use this, what I call the show and tell technique, so that if I put something in a drawing and I'm being deliberate, and so it's got a short beak. So I'm showing it with my drawing, and then I'm going to tell. I'm going to also kind of note in my sketches here what I see. So we said that now it's got a line that kind of goes back to its eye. It's got that little white zone around its eye. If you fill a bird eye in, leave a little bit of a highlight so that it feels like a little bit of sun just touching the tip of that bird's beak. So here I have my bird head coming down, kind of a little dark beak. And then its belly is going to wrap around. And it's got itself all fluffed out here. When birds are cold, fluffed out. They turn the angle of their feathers so that their feathers rock away from their skin a little bit more. And that essentially gives them more loft in their down jacket. This bird, there's a branch that's going to be coming across here. So I'm going to draw that little twig in. And that way, again, I know when to stop drawing this wing that is tucking in behind it. So more fluff coming around here. The bird's feet are going to come around here. People always are scared of drawing bird feet. My general suggestion is don't overwork them. And if you can't really see details on those feet from where you are, then you want to have a general understanding of how bird feet are structured, but you don't have to go crazy on it. If you can't really see the feet, then you can't really see the feet. It's okay. And then there are sort of pale gray parts here underneath its tail, the part that attaches to the bird's tail. There is called the undertail coverts. Those are also gray on our bird here. So I've got my little bird friend and it is darker. And I'm going to put just some light kind of hatch marks into this area to just to remind me that that area is darker. And that part, the belly is also gray. Gray. And white eye ring. And then let's put this in. So it makes a low chirp. And then it's repeated. So and it's about a second and a half between those low chirps. You can, if you wish to, you can add now that is way too dark. It's a lot darker than that bird up there on the branch. So sometimes you put something down and in your journal and you kind of go like, well, whoopsie, that's kind of overkill, right? That's okay. Sometimes you can fix it. You can, lift out some color, but what I find is usually the best way to handle that. Oh, this is actually coming out, so I can get this, keep this wet and kind of say, I'm going to try to take some of you out. But still, that's too dark. So I'm going to make a little note. Back was lighter than this. All right, so that I know that later on when I'm looking at this, I'll be like, oh, it did have a slightly darker back, but this is a little bit too extreme. And look, there's a little bit of Buffy. There's a Buffy mark up there in the wing. Buffy. Huh. I wonder if I'm going to be able to identify this when we get back home. Some little kind of Buffy patch somewhere there in the wing. So you don't need to, if you have a journal like this, you actually don't need to bring a bunch of field guides with you, because you can just take your notes, and then when you get back home, you can kind of look them up and try to figure out like who's who. If you bring your bird books, then what's going to happen is you're going to find a cool mushroom. If you bring your mushroom books, you're going to find a really interesting tree. If you bring your tree books and your mushrooms and your bird books, you're going to find some really cool animal tracks. And if you bring all those books together, oh, hey, take a look back at the mountain now, because it's changed. It's changed. So while we've been sitting there, that little cloud that was developing, it is now almost noon, but that little cloud has really grown, and it's got a really, really cool shape. It's kind of doing a little flying saucer thing above the mountain. So why don't we, let's just take a note on this. I'm going to just sort of put a marker in this bird. Thank you very much for kind of coming here. Might come back to this later, might not. I often get, little parts of sketches in my notebooks that that I never really kind of finish. Here's an underside of that bird's head. And you don't need to finish any of those. But let's just do something with that mountain, because that's really interesting. So we've got the mountain that comes up. And then there's that cool flying saucer cloud above it. So there's a flying, it's got kind of clear kind of lens shape to it. And then it has a second lens, like, I mean, that's a bizarre cloud formation. And what time is it? About 12:30? cool cloud. So timing things, like we did, how many seconds between the chirps, or when these clouds, when things are happening. I mean, all of those are things that your brain is going to easily forget. But if you, so on this one, what I'm going to do is I am just going to have a small kind of placeholder here for our mountain friend. So I don't need to really kind of draw a big mountain. I'm going to show that this happened and then this by kind of having an arrow. But wow, that is a strange cloud shape. It sort of seems to have a flat bottom. And then there's this thing that is on top of that. If you use toned paper, you also can use a white colored pencil. And so I'm just going to put where I kind of see the sun highlight on kind of around the edge of these things here. That's really interesting. Now, what I do is I'm kind of looking out at nature, all these different phenomenon, like the little bird, the these cool clouds. So what I will often do is I will start asking myself questions about what I am seeing. And I find when I start to do that, whatever phenomenon I'm looking at, it be, fish or fowl or cloud formation, just becomes a lot more interesting to me. So for instance, with this one, there's just the question of who are you? Who are you? But not a lot of birds out here, but this one is. So I'm wondering if this is a bird that is a resident bird, or if it is, or is it a kind of a late migrant. So I'm guessing that this bird, because we're here in December, I'm guessing that this bird is a are you a resident? And then, so I've asked it a couple of questions, and then my questions start prompting me to get other questions, like how does it survive the cold? What does it eat? What I'm doing is I'm asking questions of my little bird friend, and kind of then daisy chaining ideas to that. So here I'm thinking to myself that there's no bugs in winter. But all this makes kind of finding this lone bird out here, the fact that there's just this bird and not a bunch of other birds that are out here, that's really interesting. That's significant. So what's going on with that? Why aren't there a bunch of other birds out here? Why is it that this bird is out here? I mean, that's a cool thing. So if I do find this out, I want to look at, when is it in my area? Then what about these clouds? What about the clouds? So what is going on? Like I remember reading about lenticular clouds, the lens-shaped clouds, and how there's like air that is flowing through them. I wonder if the air is flowing this way or this way. So I'm going to put in a double-sided arrow. Which way is wind? Is there any tell? And this is weird. Okay, so why are they stacked? Why are those little clouds stacked up there? Huh. Why? So I remember reading about these lenticular clouds, these lenticularous clouds, right? But if I stop there, right, and kind of go like, oh, look, lenticularis clouds, I can, rather than just sort of impressing myself like, I remember the name of this cloud formation. What I want to do for really getting the most out of my brain is to start to notice the things that I don't know, right? So you get the name of the thing, it's a lenticularis cloud. I would say to that, whoop-tee-doo, right? Because, the name is not the thing. The name of this bird is not the thing. Getting the name of this bird will help me find out about how it survives the cold and what does it eat. I want to follow those up with a little bit of research later on. So which way are prevailing winds? Is high wind same direction as low? I don't know. Why are they stacked? This why are they stacked question, this is like, it's a great example of kind of finding out, just sort of noticing what you don't know and celebrating that. And so I'm going to put a big question mark next to this. I'm going to use my big pen. There's a big question mark. Why stacked? And I'm going to draw a little stack of clouds on top of it, just because I want that. What I'm doing is I'm noticing to myself something that I really don't know, something that I really don't understand. And doing this is going to prompt me to then geek out on this later and go find out, why are lenticularis clouds stacked? Right? It doesn't make any sense to me. If I were to like invent like how these clouds form, like, okay, this stacked idea, that wouldn't come to me. And so this is how we nature journal. And what you do is you find kind of cool things that are going on for you. You start with what you observe, and then on top of that, you build it out with what you don't know. And all those ideas, your observations, your and your questions, all of that goes down on the page. The more you do this, the more you are going to see, the more you're going to observe. You're going to notice things that you otherwise would not have seen. And that changes the way that you think. It changes the way that you walk in the wild. And you eventually become, if you are a local, this adds dramatically to your sense of place, your understanding of the moods and the seasons of this mountain, of all the creatures that therein dwell. it will change the way that you remember things. And so down the line, you can be this almanac. This creates an almanac of your experiences in nature observations. You don't need to be an artist to be able to do this. Start with just simple maps and diagrams, but start using drawing and visual note-taking on a regular basis. It's fun. Basically, you're inviting yourself to kind of let your brain get out there more. And you'll see things that you otherwise would not have seen. This process, being deliberately on purpose curious, you're looking at something going like, what don't I know here, right? Oh, man. That part of the game of really leaning into what you don't understand is also just an absolute mental game changer. You'll make yourself more curious about everything that you're seeing. Your brain will be much better at doing this if you get it out of here and you put it down on paper. But the more you do this, the better you're going to get at it. The more you practice this intentional curiosity, the more curious you're going to get. And that just makes the whole world around you so much more fun. If you're local and you get to go out here and do this on a regular basis, you are going to know this mountain and its seasons and its secrets in a way that is profoundly different than the way which we normally kind of look at things. The journal invites you into kind of going into deeper levels of attention and curiosity. And I hope that exploring the natural world around you in this way connects you more deeply with the beauty and wonder of nature and inspires you to become a steward to protect it. And thank you so much for joining me and the Siskiyou Land Trust this evening.
Well, thank you, Jack. That was so much fun. So much fun. And I'm looking to see if we have questions, and we don't yet. I imagine people maybe need to take a few moments to develop those. But what I wanted to say was that, what you said about practicing intentional curiosity and leaning into the what don't I know, to me is this really interesting thing, in that rather than relying on having our phones in our hands and our ability to Google anything at any point that we don't know, it's setting that practice aside and really investing in curiosity and growing it as a skill and a habit, and really changing that relationship to not knowing. And it feels really exciting.
Yeah, I agree with that. I agree with that. So when this deliberate curiosity, so not just like every once in a while a question will come to you. And it's interesting, the older we get, the fewer questions we ask. So we can intentionally fight back against that. And, but when you're deliberately asking questions, these little mysteries will pop up to you instead of, otherwise what your brain does is it searches for what you already know about something just to confirm that that's still there. And then you bop on to the next thing. So like if you know how to identify a flower, you see like, oh, look, it's a poppy. Cool. And then you're on to the next thing. So what this is an invitation is to like, let's journal about that poppy. You're going to notice things about it. And then you start wondering about like what is the function of that weird little disc down there? Like, why is that, like what part did that sort of form from? Why don't other plants have it? Why does this one? Is there a real function to that? If so, why aren't I, you can just kind of all of a sudden this thing that you normally walk by has all these little mysteries popping up out of it.
Yeah, and before I jump to the questions, I'll just say I noticed last year I took a field botany class, and part of that was dissecting things and drawing them. And so having that in a book, then as the seasons progress, I start to learn more about a particular plant that I've already sketched. And it feels like deepening that relationship and the knowledge, but it makes me pay more attention to, well, where do I see that plant? When do I see it? What time in the spring does that, it happens to be an early plant, the one I have in my mind, and so I feel like it helps me develop relationships in a really specific way which just feels like falling in love with nature even deeper. And that's a terrific thing.
Yeah. So I want to just catch on two threads that you brought there, Renee, and I think you're absolutely spot on with that. That this kind of attention, it deepens your relationship with the natural world. I believe that love is, so here's my working definition of love. Love is sustained, compassionate attention. It's that act of sustained attention. Think of it like your relationship with a child or your partner, right? And when you kind of put the work aside and you're there completely with a partner, not kind of like, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or you give, you stop doing, you get, off the telephone call and you're there with the child. That act of attention builds and cements your relationship. It's a deliberate act. It deepens your connection with them, their connection with you. And that is love. And it happens through the act of attention. So love itself is sustained and compassionate attention. And so when we pay that kind of attention to the natural world around us, we fall more deeply in love with nature. And that's what then motivates us to protect it, to be stewards, to do the kind of work that you do, and that the Land Trust does, to preserve, protect these natural places, spaces, and the organisms in them for perpetuity.
Yeah. Yeah. And in the work of the Land Trust, it is a delightful thing to get to fall in love with places. And as we go out and see special places, just lovely to go out year after year, look at what we see there and what's different at different times of year. And it's also something that I practice walking out my front door to the hill that I can be at in 5 minutes. Thanks to John Hart, who's on the webinar, who put a bridge over the creek.
Thank you, John.
Any place, I think we can fall in love with.
Yeah, and the little sit spot near your house there, it's as you get to know it and its seasons and its changes, realize that there's an infinite amount of kind of wonder and mystery that you can find in that spot just so close by.
Yeah.
And as it changes, and you're aware of those things, so do you. And that getting a little sit spot like that is a wonderful activity to focus your attention as well.
Yeah, I'm planning to do a lot of that through the winter and into the spring to see how things emerge. So we do have some questions, and quite a few of them are oriented around your recommendations for the tools that you're using. There's a specific question about what kind or brand of journal you're using, and also your opinion on waterproof paper.
So we'll start with the waterproof paper because that one's easy. If it doesn't take watercolor well, I find it's generally not necessary. I have had a journal jump into a creek, and that was sad. It went like that, and it was a big creek, and I almost didn't get it back. But when I did, it's now like it changed its shape and its form. And but generally your journals aren't jumping out into the creek. And also what I find is, generally speaking, when it's really raining hard, most people aren't like I'm going to get out my journal. I think this would be a lovely time to draw. You're standing there in the rain and it's coming down around you. And if I lift my hands up to sketch, the water's going to go down my sleeves. That's not going to be fun. I think I'm going to maybe I'm going to look around, maybe remember some things and come home and write a poem.
I'm laughing because I had that experience on the first rain this fall. I thought I would sketch, but it didn't work out that way.
Yeah, it just like rain, sketching, but we still can pay attention and actually verbalizing things when you're there in front of it. You're there in front of the mushroom, talk to the mushroom, really talk to the mushroom, and then come home and write a haiku. And that's really a fun way of just kind of giving it a little bit more attention and to remember it. But I find that the write in the rain things, not really necessary.
All right.
The journals that I use most often now are this is a journal that I made. I kind of put all the features into it that I like. And I'm going to get a more recent version of that to show you what it's like. So you can decorate the cover with whatever is on your mind. It has white paper in it that takes watercolor very well. And then it has brown toned paper in the back, which is really fun to sketch on, especially if it's really like if the sun is really intense on you. Sketching on the toned paper is great because you don't go snowblind from looking at your paper. And in the back of that, there's a little section that has ideas and tricks to help your nature journaling. And so I put in my top drawing tricks. I put in reference illustrations and things. And there's also a place there to create a little index of your own things in that book. So those are available on my website. It's a journal that I made that I find to be useful. So that's what I'm spending most of my time playing in right now. But also you'll find that you'll use one journal for a while and then you're sort of like, I think I want to use something larger. And then you'll go, I think I want to use something smaller. So your preferences will change as time goes along. And just each time you finish a journal, then you have this new opportunity. Like, do I want to go bigger? Do I want to go smaller? I generally recommend that people go as large as you will realistically actually bring with you. Because when you get larger than that, it stays at home. And if you don't have your journal, you don't have your journal. So these are available on my website, as well as hundreds of hours of free nature drawing tutorials and resources. So if you're thinking like, well, this would be nice, but I actually could use a few nature drawing lessons, it's free. And so you can go to the website, you can check that out. It's johnmuirlaws.com. Yep. And also every week I teach 3 nature journaling workshops. Wednesdays is one that's more sort of focused for teachers, but often has discussions that are of interest to anybody. Every Tuesday is a kind of open session where you get to come in and ask a question, and then we workshop whatever, like, how do you draw clouds? Right? Okay, clouds. Let's mess with clouds. And then on Thursdays, it's more of a formal class where I will have either a special guest or I will know I will be presenting about something in particular. And so you can come and I've got, slides and things prepared and like, let's make that out of clay. And, so I've got more, I know what I'll be talking about in advance. The other Tuesdays are more kind of like stump the chumps. Like, okay, I guess it's clouds.
Yeah, and I can see in the chat that we've got plenty of fans who are familiar with you and your website.
Good to see you all here.
They're posting things in the chat to help other people access them. So that's terrific. And I wanted to bring you back to a question that went a little bit more into detail, asking if you could speak about the tools you use, such as pens, pencils, watercolors, watercolor brushes. And I think your website has some information about that as well.
So under the nature journaling link on my website, there is a tools and equipment page where I talk about all the different sorts of things. The sorts of tools that I use do change over time. And next Tuesday at 10 Pacific time, we're going to have a little session there where I'm going to just dump out all the things in my sketch kit, and we're going to go through it. We're going to spend about an hour going like, I use this is how I use it. And then we're going to get a bunch of ideas from it, like, hey, everybody else out there, what's in your kit? So it's going to be a what's in your kit thing. I'll show you a few little things that are really useful. So I, for drawing, what I'm usually doing now is starting with a light pencil sketch. So I just have a light value pencil. The ones that I typically use when I'm doing my own sketching are these non-photo blue pencils. So it's just a light pale blue pencil. And those are great ways to sort of frame in a drawing, because once you start drawing over them, they practically disappear. I used to do a lot of stuff in pencil, and now I'm kind of switching over to ballpoint pen because it doesn't smear as much. And so that's fun. For color, I sometimes do things with colored pencil, but one of my favorite mediums is watercolor. To make that easier to use in the field, I have an old sock which I put around my wrist. That's my rag for changing my colors. I have a water brush, and the specific water brush that I use is also available in my store. And it's got that water inside the handle of it, so I don't need that little extra jar of water. And then a palette of paint. So what I do is I can just take this brush, dip it into the paint along with it. When I want to change colors, I give it a squeeze and a wipe on that little sock, one of the dryer orphans. The sock works great. And I'll show you my super sock, just because I saw some comments about the sock. I'll show you, this is sock 2.0, because you always get those socks that show up around the dryer that no longer have a friend, and they feel lonely, and this gives them another lease on life. But if you want so this is the sock that I usually bring with me in the field, and you're saying, what's so special about this sock? Well, I'm glad you asked, because with a slight modification, it's an awesome sock puppet. And you'd think, like, I don't really need a sock puppet in my life, but oh no, you'd be mistaken. You'll discover, if you've regularly got a sock puppet with you, there are many uses for a sock puppet. They're great.
I feel like I definitely need a sock puppet right now.
Oh yeah, I mean, life is better with sock puppets. So you just like get two little bangly eyes and yeah, it's fun. So not to have I have our sock puppet totally Zoom bomb our meeting here. I'm putting it away.
All right.
But there's no ideal kit of stuff. The stuff that you have with you is better than the stuff that you don't. I also like to bring a pair of binoculars with me. The binoculars that I use, I think they're really fun because you can use them for birds or looking at any distant sort of thing, luminarians, stuff like that. But they also focus on things. This kind focuses on things that are 1.5 feet away.
Oh wow!
And so, like right now, my screen is in focus, and so I can actually see the red, green, and blue dots that are making up my screen. That's kind of cool. So when you're looking at butterflies and you're looking at, I was just in Costa Rica watching ants. That was so much fun. There were these leaf cutter ants, and they snip off little pieces of leaves and carry them in their jaws, and they go back to their underground nest, and they bring them all down underground, and then feed these fungus mills that they make. They make these kind of interconnected honeycombs of fungus that they feed the stuff to, and then they eat the fungus. It's pretty cool. So they're all kind of walking around with carrying these little sections of leaves, and they kind of look like there's a protest. There's an ant protest, and they've all got their little placards like, no more ant pittas, no more ant pittas, and so, but you can be this far away from them, and that means the ant is this big, and you can see there's the maximal ones, there's the minor ones, these different castes. It was cool. So it allows you to geek out on the small and the distant birds.
That sounds exciting. I've been looking for that as well. And in the questions, someone asked for more information about that. Will you go ahead and give us the brand name and
Oh, sure.
feedback?
They're Pentax Papilio binoculars, also available on johnmuirlaws.com. So I don't endorse these ones because I sell them. I sell them because I endorse them, right? They're my go-to binoculars. So they're the binoculars that I use when I go in the field, whether I'm traveling internationally or at home. My daughters use these ones. They're the ones that I've given to friends. So, you know, friends don't let friends use bad binoculars. They're relatively inexpensive as binoculars go, and they also take a licking. And so my two daughters have had theirs for a number of years. They still work. They're not out of alignment. You know, you do teach them to put the binoculars around their neck and not to swing it. Right? So those are the two ways that kids break binoculars. Number one, using them as bolos and swinging them around. And number two, just kind of dropping them. And also, you got to teach them that the number one enemy of binoculars is sand. So they never put them down in the sand. No, we don't do that. Strap around the neck. And that helps.
Well, thank you for that. And there's a lot of activity going on in the chat. We've got links getting posted, and there is a question about your Tuesday, Thursday sessions. There's going to be a link on your website to that. Is that easy to
So you go to the calendar,
okay,
and then it'll say Tuesday, ask Jack, right? You know, it'll say like, you know, next Tuesday, what's in your bag, right? And you go to open that up, and there's a little button there that says click here to join meeting. If you click there, you get to join the meeting. So no pre-registration, nothing like that is necessary. You just kind of show up and like, hi. And it's fun. There's a wonderful community of people. I see a number of them here. Bea, thank you so much for adding those links into the chat.
yeah, thank you
for us. And it's a really wonderful community. It's international, and you'll meet some nice folks there.
All right. Well, thank you, Jack. This has been super fun for me, and I am certain that it's a great resource for everyone who's here with us tonight. Just reminding you all that it is recorded. I know I'll be coming back to it, and I hope that you guys do too. Obviously, there are so many resources on Jack's website. You can go there as well. And Jack, just thank you again for spending this time with us tonight.
Oh, absolutely, Renee. And
on a journey.
I want to thank you for what you are doing on behalf of nature and conservation. That is so important. Nature cannot vote, and neither can the unborn generations, right? And so the work that you are doing is going to be for the benefit of us all, including my kids' kids.
Right.
And doing that work now, it is so important, and it's sometimes really challenging and can be stressful. I just want to encourage you and all the other stewards of nature, regularly kind of go out into nature and immerse yourself in the wonder of beauty. Fall back in love with this world. Remind yourself of why we do this work, why we step up now to protect these resources. There is it follows a really wonderful and noble tradition of conservation, and thank you for continuing that and the work that you do.
Yeah, well, thank you, and thank you for making the connection between these things that we can do in our personal lives to explore nature and experience nature and develop that deep love, and that leads to the work that we can do and the organizations that we can support who are out there doing so many different kinds of work.
That's right.
So yeah, there's a lot of good work going on in Siskiyou County. Siskiyou Land Trust is just one of the organizations here doing a lot of work on the ground, to really try to make a difference in how our future looks.
I just want to encourage folks to check out and follow the work that Siskiyou Land Trust is doing. See if that might something that you can support or get involved with. Lots of ways to do that. And what's your URL?
We are at siskioulandtrust.org. SISKIYOU landtrust.org. Yeah. I see Kim posted it in the chat. So, all right. Well, I want to thank all of you for joining us tonight. It was fun to see where, some of you are coming from, and great that we have folks who are local and folks who are from far away. And Jack, thank you.
Absolutely. Last challenge for folks. See if you can figure out what bird that was that we sketched today. And why it's there in the winter. How does it do that? Wow. Thank you all. Be well. Be safe. Be kind. Let's go play in nature.
Good night, everyone.